All I wanna be, I know. Welcome to I Was Told There Would Be Snacks, a nonprofit podcast. We are live today. We're really excited to be here in the studio. I want to introduce our amazing guest today. We're going to be talking about some crazy things about like what this world is like in post-COVID, or well, there's a new variant, so I guess we're still in COVID, but getting into a new phase of the pandemic. The world has changed, and we want to talk about that today. And I have three people who are going to talk about their own experiences in the nonprofit sector, and what they're doing in their own organizations, what they know about other organizations. And we're going to talk about Zoom. We're going to talk about the Great Resignation. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff within the next hour. So hopefully you'll stay tuned for the whole hour, because we've got a lot to share. I want to go ahead and introduce who's with us today. First off, my coworker, Andrea Hill, is here. We're very excited she's here. We keep talking about bringing her on the show, but she's finally here. Andrea, will you give a 30-second rundown of who you are, what you do?
30 seconds? Okay, I'll try. So I am Andrea Hill, and I am the Chief Programs Officer for Momentum Nonprofit Partners. And my favorite snack, I think that's what we say is a prep.
Yes,
what we're going to talk about. My favorite snack is almost any snack, but I really do like the extreme airheads that have the salt and the savory on it as well, or the Sour Patch Kids.
Classics,
yes.
All right, so yeah, I am Sam O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director of Literacy Mid-South. I'm coming up on 1 year in the role.
Wow.
Favorite snack? Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Yeah, good one. Yeah. All right, and finally, Devaney Perry.
Good afternoon. Devaney Perry. I'm the Executive Director of Building Memphis. It stands for Build, Live, Develop, and Grow. And we support neighborhood revitalization, and CDC's Community Development Corporation is doing that work. I'm excited to be here, and my favorite snack, I would say long-term, is goldfish.
Goldfish, yes. Another classic. Y'all like the classics.
Yeah.
So we actually have snacks today, but they're not on camera, because when I came in, I was eating some of the donuts, and they were all over me. So they were off screen, because I will otherwise be covered in crumbs. But they are over there. They're off camera. All right. Well, thanks for being here, y'all. We're really excited. We're just going to launch into this conversation. We're going to start talking about the 4-day work week. Is the 4-day work week really even a thing? Is this a thing? Is this a pipe dream? Let's talk about it, because a lot of people in nonprofits are talking about it, and people are even piloting it in Memphis. So first, let me get your thoughts on a 4-day work week. Does this sound like a viable option for your organization? Does it sound like a viable option for nonprofits in general? Why or why not? Devaney, let's start with you.
Great. I would say the 4-day work week, even before COVID, I know a lot of nonprofits were really considering the 4-day work week. It seems as if the work of nonprofits is not entirely hour-based, hour by hour. Like many nonprofits don't provide overtime pay and things like that, but the work doesn't really stop. And depending on who your audience is, you may take clients or community events after traditional work hours. So given the ramp up in nonprofit work in general, I do think a 4-day work week is something that definitely should be considered throughout the nonprofit industry.
I'd say for us, I think maybe it's seasonal. Like so, like I'm thinking right now, we have this robust summer programming. We're assisting more than 100 summer sites, just with different sorts of literacy supports. It would be tough during the summer for us to do a four-day work week, because at some point a program or a partner probably would not get the resources that they're looking for. But when we look at we're thinking along, like moving into the school year, kind of thinking on that kind of schedule, that type of calendar, I think it becomes a little bit more feasible because the time is a little bit more managed. But again, just during the summer, kids are in over 100 different places. They're in 100, I would say summer sites. And you also have, summer learning academy, summer school. And if we're trying to reach that population, it would be tough to do it just in 4 days during the summer.
Yeah. And on the flip side, we're nobody's coming to Momentum right now because it is the summer. So this would be a great time for us to have a 4-day, right?
Right. Well, and also I would think about we actually went to a great conference maybe a month or so ago, and it was a national conference for nonprofits, and they had a speaker talk about 4-day work week, and it's actually a 4dayworkweek.com website. And I think for me, being equitable across the board for all of our staff, being mindful of the kind of schedules that are their direct service, they're in there, they're the front line, as opposed to maybe like office staff or intermediary organizations. I think we have to be mindful of that. But if we all kind of focus on like an 80, 100, and 80 rule, which they list out in that 4-day work week, is 80% of the pay, or 80% of the time, 100% of the pay, and 100% of like the productivity. I think I got the percentages wrong. I'm not a math major, but mainly keeping things the same and continuity wise, but also giving people flexibility. And I think during the pandemic, we've learned that we can't do things the same way, but we also can't do things like just start out and just change everything up, but we probably could. But we just have to be mindful of how we actually work among our staff and making sure they feel comfortable and they feel heard in the process.
Yeah, for sure. You brought up an interesting thought about, there might be some feelings around working 80% of the time for 100% of the pay. I would counter that. I work more than 40 hours. I work on the weekends and stuff. But when I'm in the office, I spend time on social media. Yeah. I talk to you a lot in the office.
We do.
Like the water cooler conversations sometimes go 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So that time, if it was a 4-day work week, we might not be able to bond as much, which is one of the things I always worry about. Yeah. But we'd also I would love to have my Fridays off, right? I would work even harder and not get on Facebook, not talk to you as much,
Right.
But I wonder if that's actually even feasible, you know?
Yeah.
So how do we keep this fair to everybody? Because you were talking about seasonally, I just think I used to be a director of development back in the day. And at Christmas time, we did holiday cards as honorariums, and we would get those all at once, and then we would, all these people would do their end of the year gifts. Everybody else was off for a week, and I was supposed to be off for a week, but I couldn't not go into do my job, there. How do we keep this fair for people like that? People who are hourly wage workers, because they're not going to see the same benefits as somebody who's salaried. Is this going to be fair, or is somebody ultimately going to be left out of this if this is something that's embraced?
I would say yes. I think that, again, when you have that division of how people are paid, there are I would say perks and some takeaways from being salaried, because you could do 40 hours a week and you're salaried, or you could do 60 hours a week and you're still salaried. There's some things to take away from that. But when you talk about hourly workers, I think that's kind of where we start to talk about how do we create this equity and this fairness within it. I don't know what that answer is. Yeah. But we really have to think through that. So does that mean we make everyone salaried? Is kind of this wider, equal sweep of how we pay people? Then we can come back and talk about a 4-day work week, or just how do we work through that is the thing.
And I'll add, I think as we had these conversations, you all as executive directors, leadership team members, we are thinking about it from our standpoint, but really bringing in the voices of the folks who are actually doing that direct service and that work. They can tell us what would help them be more flexible or feel more equitable in the process. And I think it is we want to make sure that they have the hours. We want to make sure that the work still has some continuity and it's getting done. But is there a way for us to make sure that they don't feel like they're left out of the process and we don't care about them? We just want the office staff to have time off, or the central office staff to have time off.
It seems like it would be easier for smaller organizations to implement this than these large organizations who have people who are both salaried and hourly, and like a really complicated, or maybe you find a way for the people who maybe can't do the 4-day work week, give them additional benefits or something like that. I'm not an HR person, so so I've heard from a lot of people, we would love to do this and we think that it would work, and there are most of these studies that are coming out show that like productivity increases, happiness increases, people taking absenteeism lowers, people are just happier with their jobs, engagement is lowered a little bit, like I said, like talking to you. But what about funders and donors? So the corporate America has not necessarily embraced this 4-day work week yet. If we do it before corporate folks do, many of them are on our boards, many of them are donors, what are they going to say? Are they going to be like, oh, okay, so I'm donating my money the same way and they're working less, which is probably not the actual truth, but what are they going to say? Do y'all worry about that?
I think we all worry about what funders.
I mean,
what funders say.
Generally, yeah.
But again, that's part of just the continued conversation. Like we have to look at this as in a way of like how are funders? What questions are they going to have? We almost have to anticipate that.
Yeah.
And to your point, understanding that some of them have corporate ties or are part of corporate organizations, we have to just have like, okay, this funder or this board member, they're going to ask, okay, what work is being done over 4 days that you can't do it over 5 days? Or like how many hours? Like, because you almost have to shift it and think like, how would a corporate person think? Because a lot of their stuff is laid out over a 5-day work week. So just kind of, I would say embrace and prepare for those questions because you're going to have them, and you're going to have them from everybody. That's the whole purpose of talking about it, having the whole conversation. To your point, everyone's going to have some experience. Everyone's going to have input that they're going to offer, and we have to bring all that together and think through it more.
And starting with a pilot, there's some research out there that really recommends you start with a pilot. You don't just go at it. You see how it works, have some measurable outcomes, and then go from there, right? Like that's pretty important to not do something that you don't know if it's going to work or not within your own organization. So I know that Seeding Success in Memphis is piloting that right now. That could be maybe a way to just sort of get your foot in the door. But also when you're talking to funders or your board about that, I think that's a more palatable way to offer this up. You're also probably gonna have to have a lot of research. If you're going to your board members, you have to have a lot of research. What would your board members say about this? Devaney, what would your board members say?
I'm really thinking about this because being a membership organization, our board includes our members. So with us instituting a 4-day work week, what if our members need us on a Friday because they're working on a Friday? So there would be some inconsistencies there that we would definitely need to address ahead of time as we're considering this. I also think from a funder and donor perspective, I've been a part of several conversations where staff retention was a discussion with regard to donors, but then also office culture and the culture of the work of community development, and knowing that our funders and other philanthropic organizations that are not our funders are wanting to understand the work of nonprofits, more specifically in my field of community development. I think they also want to make sure that the organizations doing this work maintain a healthy work culture too, and they do ask those questions. So I think a 4-day work week could easily be a conversation of office culture and making sure people are healthy in doing this work of community development. So I think our board would be interested in it. We would just really need to consider, as a membership organization, how are we serving our members, being less accessible to them on during a very specific time frame.
Yeah. I just imagine like 10 years ago, like pitching this idea to a board and just like board members just start flipping tables, you know, because like, what are you talking, or funders, you know, they run out of the room. But, you know, the Europeans have been, they have been doing things like this for a long time. You know, no work in August for some of them, you know, like, you know, and even Whole Child Strategies, they did a 1 month sabbatical for their entire staff, which sounds lovely, right?
Yeah.
I'll work on that. I'll work on that.
Thank you.
I still can't comprehend what that means. and I read the email that explained it, and I was like, oh, okay. And
it probably took.
What does that mean? How does it feel being within the organization, being a stakeholder of the organization? There are a lot of considerations there, especially the Memphis environment. I would add that too. Right. Being in community, you know, what happened?
I'll say I think it takes some getting used to. Like even within our office, we have unlimited PTO, but I come from the 20 years of experience in nonprofits, and it was like, take a day off? Like, what is that? So take a whole month off? So I think it just, one, it's like setting the precedent and then going from there and just taking time to get used to that process. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our staff feel whole and they feel able to do the job. And if they have this amount of stress because they think that we're putting that on them, we need to kind of talk about why is that stress there. And that stress may be eliminated by maybe a 4-day work week or a sabbatical,
and
or just a flexible schedule. Yeah.
People have children, and they have
lives,
and they have COVID, and they have people in their family with COVID, and they have, you know, like all of this stuff going on. And some of that you can't schedule, right? But you can schedule some doctor's appointments. And things like that. So like that's your Friday off is, you know, like, you know, so I think that it would make life a lot simpler for a lot of people with this 4-day work week. One thing that a lot of people say is like, we have to wait for corporate America to embrace something before nonprofits embrace something. I resent that a lot. Like they have a lot of like money in research and development, and they have all, you know, like we don't. I think that puts it like the Prince and the Paupers, and we're the paupers, you know. But at the same time, like, what are the optics? Like, there's going to be some optics with going to a 4-day work week if we do it first in the nonprofit sector. And I just foresee what would be said about us. I do read the comments when I'm in the paper. I read the comments, and I've been provocative in the news, and I know what people say. So, you know, don't read the comments about yourself. By the way, don't read yourself in the comments.
You know, to that, Kevin, I would even say that even speaks to just a greater picture of how sometimes there's this prevailing thought that nonprofits we're not deserving. Like I have a couple of corporate friends that when the corporate grind kind of gets to them, they're like, you know what, I should go work for a nonprofit.
Right.
As if it's just easier.
Right.
And so, but that's just the thinking around it, you know, and even, you know, again, when we get into this whole 4-day work week thing, to your point, Ebony, like people are gonna ask, like, so 4 days, like, what are you gonna do? Like, why do you need time off? You work for a nonprofit, and your work is easier than mine. I mean,
there's so much passion and feeling behind it.
So there's again all of these questions, all of these thoughts that, you know, we'll have to overcome and talk through. But that's part of it. We're not fully seen as a real workspace to a lot of people.
Because really all we do in nonprofit is sort of walk around, give each other hugs, you know,
pass
out some food, and that's nonprofit, right? That's easy. It's easy.
Right.
It's easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a quote from my mother, and I don't know where she got it from, but she says, Farmer John's best meal can't push and pull. So in this world, we are working hard and hard trying to make sure our clients get served, our organizations, whoever we're working with. And if we are pushing ourselves to a point, we can't do both things. We can't be all things to all people and also all things to all people in our homes, our family life, and everything else. So there has to be a balance. Absolutely.
So we've got about 30 seconds left. I love this conversation. I want to continue it, but we're going to talk about Zoom next. Zoom is not my best friend, but it's having to be our best friend. I am so over Zoom, y'all. But when we come back, we are going to talk about Zoom, and we're going to talk about this virtual world that we're living in. Is this around to stay, or are we going to hopefully get back in, well, hopefully for me, get back meeting with each other? I think fundraising's hard, getting to know each other is hard on Zoom. We will talk about all of that when we get back. See you in about 3 minutes.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm your new Executive Director, Dara Lee.
For entrepreneurs, navigating your way to business success can be both exhilarating and exhausting. Whether you're changing locations, expanding, or leveling up production, wouldn't it be nice to have a business coach ride along with you on the journey? Well, buckle up. This is Business Ride Along.
Welcome back, y'all. We are back with our special guest talking about it's a new day, it's a new dawn, or it's a new dawn, it's a new day. Talking about all these new things that are happening in the nonprofit space that are different and are going to probably be around with us for quite some time. That 3 years ago we never would have guessed we'd be on Zoom more than we were actually talking to people in person. So let's talk about Zoom. For a second, let's talk about how much we hate Zoom or love Zoom. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I hate Zoom. I love Zoom. Zoom is like one of those people, or it's like when you meet a new potential friend. And like that friend is awesome, and they are just like you, and you have so much to talk about. And like then after a while, that person is just always texting you and always calling you and just always there and just like in front of you and won't go away. And then you suddenly realize your great friend is like latching onto you and you can't get rid of that friend. Zoom is like that, like the person that you, at first we were like, Zoom, this is the answer. And then for me, I was like, if I am on one more Zoom call today, my head's gonna explode. Are y'all the same way, or am I just grumpy?
Your description of Zoom sounds a lot like Jennifer Jason Leigh in Single White Female.
Yes.
Just, everything was cool, great roommate. Then she tried to kill her.
Yeah. And then that happened.
I mean, just jumping out there, for me, it's okay in moderation. Mm-hmm. There are some days where I'm tired of it, but I think a lot of us learned like early on, do not schedule back to back to back Zooms. Like, Zoom, take an hour break, and then maybe do another. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of us made that mistake early on. Yeah. It's like 9 o'clock Zoom, all right, then let's do this 10 o'clock, and maybe break for a little bit, 11:15 Zoom, and at the end of the day, like, I don't want to see my computer. I don't want to talk to anybody over a screen, and I can't believe I got to log back in and do all this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
So, we learned some of those lessons early on. But it's gonna be here.
Yeah.
I think especially as we talk about gas prices.
Okay.
So do I want to gas up and go drive 15 minutes across town to talk to somebody, or can I just Zoom?
Right.
And it may be an hour conversation.
Right.
Well, I'll go next. So I'm gonna look at my camera and tell y'all I like Zoom. I am a social and antisocial person at the same time, so it comes ebbs and flows, right? But I think being on Zoom, there's a population of people who've always been on Zoom and always been working with Zoom. And so I think now we, again, like 4-day work week and all these other things, we are now getting used to this as a process or a piece of our work that we do on an everyday basis. I am productive, I think, on Zoom. Now, do I want it back to back? Absolutely not. But being mindful that there are people that may be autoimmune deficient, have some level of disability or need to be on Zoom as opposed to another in-person setting. And I think we just have to give everybody grace to just be like, hey, what do you feel comfortable with? And it's okay for you to say, I feel comfortable with a mask on, or I feel comfortable with Zoom as opposed to in person, and we still get the work done. Now, there are some things that we need to be in person for. In those things, I don't have an idea because, again, that's the antisocial side, not knowing what we need to be in person for. But we just have to have a balance, and we have to be able to be mindful of everybody in the process and not just exclude because we think this is the best way to go.
And Devaney, you have some CDCs that some of these are really small grassroots organizations. They might may not even have internet. Or some of the clients that they're serving might not have internet. So if you're trying to do community organizing, if you're trying to bring people together, like there might be some limitations on using technology like that with folks who still don't have internet. And there's the statistics on how many people don't have internet is it would shock a lot of people.
Yeah. I would say that even in the beginning, I did not like Zoom. I began the process not liking Zoom, and so I initially built my own emotional walls. I don't feel comfortable on Zoom. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to turn my camera off because I'm not sure that I would welcome you into my home on a normal basis. And we're just working on this project, but I don't want you to see my entire house. Maybe I don't, or I haven't seen my hairdresser in months because of the pandemic. Maybe I just don't want to be on camera today. Like there's no makeup and wardrobe behind me.
Right.
So I think that was my personal preference to Zoom, and the reason why I'm just like, But I also know that I've always been a person who picks up the phone to call people. Even to this day, I will not send someone a Zoom first. I will send you my number. Hey, my number is in my signature. And I think also when it comes to a lot of our members that are doing a lot of work in community and neighborhoods, they are traditional in-person work, and that work sometimes cannot take any type of additional technology short of making a phone call or knocking on someone's door. So a lot of our organizations, especially during the course of the pandemic, did have to go back to, putting a letter on someone's mailbox or on someone's door, letting them know what are the happenings, asking people are they okay, saying, hey, I'm going to be walking around and I'll drop off a food basket at your door tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Just need you to know so you can, you'll know I'm out there and you can pick it up after I leave. So I think from the standpoint of, everyone cannot Zoom.
Right.
And making allowances for that, whether it's a personal preference or it's a matter of just technology and where we are today, I think we have to be a lot more just flexible with how we expect everyone to join our Zoom calls. Because everyone has to come to those spaces as an individual. And I think that, the work is important, but you have to think about the individual first.
Yeah. And it is definitely hard if you're working with clients. It's definitely hard to build trust and establish trust with folks over Zoom because all they're seeing is your head. Like establishing trust, I think really is an in-person thing, or where it happens faster, I guess. And then also with your donors, I think making an ask over Zoom is probably a little bit harder. I have not had to make an ask over Zoom yet. But like having to make an ask over Zoom seems like it would be also difficult, especially if you don't know this person, you don't have an established relationship, but you're asking for $50,000 over something. It just seems like it could get a little strange. But is that where we're going from now on? Is that where we're gonna be? And is this an opportunity for us to be innovative? How have y'all been innovative in this space? Because all of y'all have so many different constituents. And Andre, I'm going to let you talk about momentum, what we had to do. But like, Devaney, let's start with you. Like, what changes did you have to make when the pandemic started? And then how did that help you? Because Zoom did, I'm sure, help all of us on stage, even though we hate it.
I would say at Building Memphis, historically, we have a monthly member meeting where all of our CDC members, our bank members, our agency members get they get the opportunity to come together for an hour and a half, and really network and hear what's going on in the industry, share what they're working on individually within organizations, and that time has been communicated back to us as so valuable and so missed. And we're trying to recapture it. And I will say one thing that's great about Zoom. Zoom did adapt to the market and what people needed really quickly. Even Google Meets and Microsoft Teams, which is the one that's like, do I really want to use that one?
You're ranking them right now?
Yeah,
I see it in the head. It's going.
But you know, the breakout rooms,
Yeah.
unfortunately, people still don't know how to use those, and that does drive me crazy. Like, guys, there's a button that says breakout. But, you know, I think the breakout rooms and being able to just allow people space within us trying to create these same atmospheres of our member meetings online, I think that has given us a tool that we can use. I will also say that phone calls are so important. Our staff now all have cell phones because we were also not in the office, and our members still needed to contact us, and we needed to contact our members. So we definitely made sure that each of our staff members now have a cell phone, and I think that works very well. I think we'll stay with cell phones as opposed to when we are back in the office longer than working remotely, that we will continue to have cell phones.
Interesting. Huh. What about y'all?
Yeah, so you know, we have our adult learning program, and all of that was face-to-face prior to the pandemic. You know, we had to meet adults where they were, often in libraries, often in coffee shops, wherever they felt comfortable. But we had to, you know, really work out what a Zoom schedule looks like. You know, again, for the sake of health and the sake of space and whatnot, we really had to be creative in the ways that we engaged those adult populations, and it worked. I mean, I think there were struggles at the beginning, you know, with scheduling and whatnot, and even to your point, those folks that don't have access to technology, don't have access to Wi-Fi or anything like that, you know, we managed to overcome that. You know, I would say person by person, and figure out the best ways to reach those populations. As far as reaching out to children, a lot of, you know, the pandemic was different because you had children learning like in bubbles. So, you know, we didn't do the same sort of in-person sort of I would say technical assistance, tech support or whatever. So we had what we call lit bags, where we really dropped off a bag with reading materials and said, hey, this is for all your third graders. And we've limited that contact. But a lot of our Zoom work was around our adult program because it was that one-on-one planning. One thing that I think came away from Zoom, well, one innovative thing, and then one thing I want to touch on real quickly. One thing is that we did have, it was a way to work a bunch of people into a space at one time without the time constraints. So, because anytime you try to have a meeting with 10, 15 people, someone's going to be like, oh, I can't make it, or I'm going to be this, or I'm going to be that. But if you say, well, let's do it over Zoom, people can kind of find some time, even if they have to jump off 30 minutes early. They still find that time to do that. So we did work through that as a Zoom as a time-saving measure when it came to meetings. But the other thing that came from Zoom, this isn't innovative, this is just something I realized, is I would say I call it background snobbery, because people would they would say, I'm going to go to at home and I'm going to buy this nice painting so it can be in my background when I'm or I'm going to move my bookshelf over here so you see all my leather-bound volumes in this mahogany shelf.
One clean corner.
Right, so people can think of I'm astute and smart and just about my business while I'm on Zoom.
Right.
That's not me. In my house, I have 3 children, so I would find the cleanest wall that didn't have stuff written on it, and that's what you got, right? But I mean, to me, those are the things I saw that kind of came from Zoom. It's fun to watch because it is an exercise in human observation.
It is. It really is.
But it's been a learning process the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'll just share a little bit about what Momentum is doing, and Kevin really kind of helped usher us into this. Work from home during the pandemic. We're very accommodating to the staff during that time. And I think we did a lot of our outward-facing work via Zoom. So all of our workshops, our events and convenience and things were on Zoom. I kind of in a I guess certain time frame, maybe a couple of months ago, started trying to do things hybrid model, where it was like you can Zoom in, or you can be in person, or we can do one or two things in person with a limited number. But I think we just have to be mindful of what is the yield from that. You know, do we have more yield of people coming on Zoom, or do we have more yield of people coming in person? What are we willing to kind of forego or to miss out on with either one of these settings? But I think we've been doing a good job of just trying to get people engaged in other ways, as opposed to just those workshops and those events.
And we are definitely still learning at Momentum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Facilitating, I will say, I did a volunteer management workshop, volunteer management boot camp. It was 4 sessions, 3 hours long each, over Zoom. Everybody had their cameras off, which I don't.
I don't like.
I don't like it, but I also understand, because I want to turn my camera off at all times. And you know, I couldn't get the feedback I needed.
Yes.
I didn't know if I did a good job or not, and the evaluations were good, but the whole time I was like, I'm bombing at this. And then with the hybrid, you know, we had a Mid-South Philanthropy Network meeting, and I thought, everybody kept saying, like, I'm so excited to get back, I'm so excited to get back. Yeah. And we had a hybrid, and 2 people showed up for the meeting, but then there were 20 people up on the screen. Yeah. You know, and so, like, what is this going to work? Yeah. And we are still trying to figure that out. Y'all, we have just a few seconds left. It's time to go back to another commercial break. I want to keep talking about this, but we're going to talk about something else in just a second. We will see y'all right back here in just a few minutes. Would-Be Snacks, a nonprofit podcast. We're talking about something else now. We're moving really fast in these conversations, aren't we? Right now we're going to talk about flexible PTO. And for some of y'all, this might be blowing your minds. Some of y'all already have flexible PTO, and you're like, I could be on the stage talking about it myself. So, but this is something that the COVID pandemic has wrought or has brought, depending on your feelings about it. We at Momentum implemented flexible PTO before the pandemic, actually in 2018, 2019, and our staff loves it. Our staff really loves it. So basically they can take off as much time as they want, but they have to make sure that everything gets done. So you can get it done, you know, at over 2 weeks, or you can take a week of that off and get it done in a week. Nobody's really taken that much advantage of it, or any advantage of it on our staff. We let adults adult, but they also have a really productive team. I'm not sure that's always the norm, but we have the right people on staff maybe. We do. You know, so we have that flexible PTO policy. What do y'all have? Is this something, if you don't have it, is this something for the 2 of y'all? Is this something that y'all would consider? I'm sure your staff is probably watching this going,
want to know more.
Right, so they're probably taking notes like, you
sorry.
So we don't call it flexible PTO because one of the things that, again, working in the pandemic has presented is this sort of hybrid scheduling that we have. Like, so sometimes it's not just I'm taking off because I'm sick with COVID. It's, well, there's another spike out there, so we're going to be at home. I'm just not coming into the office. And so I think that has kind of been weaved into PTO in ways. To your point about letting adults, excuse me. I'm more so worried about just the outcome, the productivity. Are we still doing the things we say we're going to do, making the marks that we say we're going to make? So if you are at the dog walking park and you're getting your spreadsheet together, I don't care. I just need to know that come Friday the spreadsheet is together and we can report on it and all these things line up. But one thing we have done is when someone needs to take time off, we've also kind of worked in mental health days. And so when they say I need a mental health day, I say okay, bye. I'm not don't give me all of the I'm going to take it now because of this. It's like that is your time to figure out, recenter, and come back hopefully better and refreshed. Because again, the pandemic has brought out a lot of stressors as it relates to trying to work in the middle of all of these things that are going on. So I think when we think about a hybrid environment, mental health days, and I'm a recovering bureaucrat, so I don't require anyone to give me 2 weeks notice before they take a day off. If you need to take a day off because things happen, I permit that, and that's kind of our flexibleness of it. Understanding that we're doing it in the middle of an active pandemic.
There's an empathetic leader at the helm of Literacy Mid-South, so that's part of the battle right there is having some, that's great. So it might not be as clean cut as maybe unlimited or flexible PTO. It might be something that's sort of woven into the culture. So it might be a little bit more nuanced for some people, where it's still, I'm sure even if you don't have a formal policy there, your staff is really appreciative.
Yeah, they're appreciative. And again, we're adults. They give me the heads up. They'll say like, I'm going to be here and here doing this. Like, okay, I'll see you when you get back. Just make sure, I know you were working on a certain thing. How's that progressing before you leave? They give me updates on that. And again, we're still hitting our marks, we're still doing well, and the organization is going great.
Yeah, I only had one situation where it was like the person was taking so much time off that things were dropping. They were dropping into my lab, and they were dropping into our director of operations lab again and again, to where I had to address it. But that was a while ago. So, Devaney, what about you?
At Building Memphis, we have always had flex time. It's in our employee handbook. Also, given the nature of our work, a lot of public engagement, public forums. A lot of that work, of course, will have to happen after 5 o'clock when our residents of Memphis and public will have the time to really engage us in a way. So we already had flex time. When COVID came, we did institute a COVID-19 policy of remote work that has evolved over time. Right now, our staff work remotely Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're in the office now Tuesday and Thursday. August 1st, it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I don't think I've shared that with them yet, but
the comments are lit right now.
Well, you've heard it here first, Joel. You've heard it here first.
But we still have a PTO. We did extend our PTO days in 2020. I think it was an additional 5. But with the flex time, the PTO, and then our culture being, I won't say lax, but our culture being more empathetic and also concerned about our employees. But then also, again, nonprofits are driven by the outcomes of our work, as previously stated, and meeting those metrics of how we are delivering the outputs of our work. So I do think that we, nonprofits, were already prepared to exist in a hybrid work environment. We just needed to give ourselves the right policies and instructions in order to do so. I also think that when you have flex time, let adults. I don't necessarily need this to be documented. Hour 9, hour 10, hour 11 past my 7.5 hour work day went towards flex time on Thursday. I don't need that level of detail and micromanagement in the process. It's really just, are we meeting the deadlines of our work, and what is the process and the progress of our work over time?
I think you bring up a good point, because I think we've been working flexibly really in a nonprofit world for many years. I think we now have labeled it, yes, this is flex time, or this is a hybrid schedule, or this is this, you're off this time because you're working at 6 o'clock at night doing an assessment or something. So I think communication is always going to be key. I know for me, coming into this flexible work environment, I was like, wait, take off hours? I don't know what that means. You know, what does that really feel like?
It really was hard for you.
It
was. When she came to Momentum, she was like, wait, what? You want me to take off? What?
Wait, I get time? So adjusting to that, I think, because for me, I'll say, maybe it's been institutionalized that when you're working these different nonprofits, even in Georgia where I worked, and here in Memphis, it has not been like take off. It's been do the work, get the work done, but again, never really understanding what does that mean. Does that mean get the work done at the detriment of myself, or get the work done at the detriment of our teams and our relationships within the office and outside the office? So I think being flexible, I think it is just having that communication to say, hey, Sam, I need this hour or two to take off, but when I get back, I'm gonna be ready to hit it and get the work done. Or that spreadsheet is gonna be ready and on your email at 7 o'clock in the morning when I said it's gonna be there. Yeah. So just being able to communicate with people and letting them know, and encouraging people to be flexible with their time if that's what's needed.
Yeah. But there are, of course, limitations to
absolutely.
that. I don't want anybody to think that the nonprofit industry, we're just open and we set our own schedules. It is not that way by any means.
Maybe Tuesday, maybe Thursday.
Like there are definitely limitations. I'm dealing with those limitations right now, and making sure people understand how we actually define remote work. Remote work, yes, but remote work in other places that are not Memphis. Meanwhile, we are an organization that is responsive to neighborhoods in Memphis. I can't be responsive to neighborhoods with employees not somewhere located in Memphis, geographically and physically. So I think, I don't want anybody to take away, the nonprofit industry, you can just do what you want. No, there are definitely limitations to that.
And I'll say, just even to that point, being a community-based organization, Memphis-centric, you have to be able to consider that. What is it to work somewhere else and then still be doing the work here? But are there projects or things that you can do that you may be able to work for a week away, maybe at the beach? Maybe Kevin will let me go to the Bahamas or Turks and Caicos. But I still got to get the work done, and I have to have these certain hours to say I'm doing this. That doesn't happen, probably won't happen, but I will try it after this podcast. But just to your point, making sure that we're good stewards of the employees and of the impact that we're entrusted to take care of.
Well, we actually, during the pandemic, we had a former employee who you replaced, who was in New Orleans for I don't even know how long, for maybe some weeks or months, and it worked out just fine because we were all remote at that point. The flexible PTO. One thing that was a unintended or unexpected little blessing. So when we moved from the 10 paid days accrued and everything to just having flexible PTO. All of those liabilities came off our audit, and so there was no liability there anymore. So it made it easier for the auditors. It made it easier for our COO to keep up with it. One time, my gallbladder, years ago, I was working at another place. My gallbladder burst, and I was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks. So that place had 10 days sick or vacation or whatever. And so I came back, limping into the office, could barely sit up straight with my gallbladder, and it was old school. It wasn't like laparoscopic. It was like they opened me up, so I was in a lot of pain, and a lot of medication too. So I was swirly at all times, and one of the first things that was said was, you're out of days. So if you take off any more days, we're not going to be able to pay you for those days. Blah blah. And I was like, get me out of here. Y'all don't care about me at all.
Right.
And I also have a friend who lost her mom to COVID. During this time, and the bereavement policy was 3 days. She had to take care of all of the everything, all the arrangements, the estate, everything, and she was on her own doing that. And then when basically she was told, you have to come back. You've had your 3 days. Wow. We have to be a little bit more empathetic on the other side of this. But it's been interesting to see who has adapted and who has not. And I think those organizations, it is interesting when I hear from organizations that are really struggling with their staff retention. And you look at their policies, and they're so pre-COVID. Some of them are pre, 1970s. Like policies in place. We have to rethink these as bosses. First off, from an empathetic standpoint, but also from we have to retain our staff, and we have a lot of competition.
What's
the
process? Because I know with regard to employee handbooks, we are updating it as we see things or as I see things. But there are some things like the bereavement process policy. It is, I think, the standard 3 days. But what does that really mean? Is 3 days enough time? And then sometimes it only applies to your immediate family. 3 days is not enough time for immediate family. Why is that there? And from an HR, I'm not HR, but from an HR, it's my role. But HR industry, where did that come from, and how do we move it as an industry?
Well, and people, I've worked with a lady who cats were her best friends, and she was a single lady, and her cat died, and we're going to give her some bereavement for that, because that is and family isn't just blood either, and so you lose your best friend, you lose these other people in your lives. That's not going to, that still is something that people have to recover from. So how do y'all think, in these last couple of minutes, how do y'all think this is all affecting the Great Resignation, which is happening right now? What should nonprofits know if they're trying to retain staff? We've talked about all these new features and things that have come out of COVID. What do nonprofits need to know if they're going to want to retain their staff and not have to worry about rehiring staff? And if they do have to rehire a whole bunch of staff, what do they need to put in place? Give me 20 seconds each.
I have learned, and I've also hired someone to support us with performance evaluations, like when that happened and what that looks like, and then also what does renegotiations of job descriptions, responsibilities, as well as salary look like for staff retention?
I would probably say a lot of the same. But I think the key word is flexible. You have to be flexible in all the ways that you operate. Doesn't mean you give in. It just means you need to be flexible, willing to listen.
Well, and I'll say this. It may be funny enough said. We're all humans. I think we all identify as a human being. So that's how we need to treat other people. I think I was a part of the Great Resignation. I was able to leave my previous organization and move on to Momentum. And I think it's opportunity. And I think it's flexibility. And I think the main thing is just making sure that you value your employees, because you also value the work that's going to be getting done. And if you take them out of the human side out of that equation, the impact cannot happen.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Well, we're glad you're there. We're glad you're there. Well, I want to thank y'all. Sorry, something in my throat. I want to thank y'all for being here today and having this conversation. I feel like we've been here 5 minutes. I want to talk so much more about all this with y'all. But be sure to check out their websites, buildingmemphis.org, BLDG.
Memphis.
.org.
It's an acronym.
LiteracyMidSouth.org and MomentumNonprofitPartners.org. Until next time, I'm Kevin Dean, CEO of Momentum Nonprofit Partners, and you've been watching I Was Told There Would Be Snacks, a nonprofit podcast. See you next time.
Thank you.